Hello everyone, this is Addis Dialogue. My guest today is Dr. Tidiane Ouattara. Dr. Ouattara is a space expert at the African Union. Welcome to Addis Dialogue, Dr. Tidiane.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's talk about just the African space science technology, how far it is significant for the Africa, just considering the current circumstances of the continent.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, I would like to thank you also for the opportunity you are giving us to explain to Africans the importance of space for the sustainable development of Africa. The African space policy and strategy is a big change in the African space landscape. It is given, I would say, the key drivers to Africans to use space for the African sustainable development, for the creation of jobs, for innovation, etc. It is a huge opportunity for the African economic development.
To what extent has Africa exploited the space science so far?
I would say over the last 40, 50 years, Africa has been in space, but it was a little bit scattered and it was a little bit low in terms of engagement. Nowadays, Africa is really involved in space. I would say the four segments of the space are covered. We are talking about Earth observation, telecommunication by satellite, navigation and positioning, astronomy, and space science. You can easily see that these four segments are part of our daily life. We can no more live without the space in our life. This is why you will see many African countries, many African citizens being involved in the space matters. As you know, South Africa, Algeria, Egypt, Nigeria were in space. They were the only four countries. But over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen some newcomers like Kenya, Ethiopia, Ghana, Gabon, having space agencies, meaning these are the decision makers who made the decision to have institutes, national institutes, that will guide their space policy and also the exploitation of the space for the benefit of their citizens.
So can we just have some specific areas that the space science has been applied to the continent's development?
First of all, the most, I would say the well-known one is the Earth observation. What it is about, it is the use of satellite images for water and natural resources management, in general for land management, for marine and coastal areas, for transportation, for agriculture, for climate change. All these areas in Africa are covered by the use of the space. Why? Because space can give you the opportunity to cover a huge and large area, superficie, but at the same time it can be repetitive in a short time. And it provides you with most information, a lot of information, even some you cannot see directly looking at. Just walking, processing the images, you can get access to this information. Secondly, the telecommunication by satellite. Today, be the broadcasting, be the television, radio, be the simple mobile phones, all these are working thanks to the satellites. That is the space technology. Navigation and positioning, GPS. People are knowing their position, are locating, are finding, researching areas thanks to the GPS, which is the navigation and positioning, which is again the space science. Astronomy and science in the space. There are some applications in the medical areas of some experimentations done, in the space on, for example, the duration of the life, etc. There are several applications, in our daily life. Space is all over.
When you see the agriculture sector, it is not much productive. And when we also see just some natural disasters, for example, what's happening right now at East African, the flooding crisis. So in the African continent, can alleviate or just tackle those problems earlier if it applied or just used the space science tech successfully?
Excellent. That is an interesting question. I would say that, first of all, in terms of potentiality of space, space can, for the agriculture, for example, space can allow to identify the potential areas, specific areas for different type of cultures, even the areas that are not really good areas for the cultures. Secondly, thanks to the space technology, we can even have some kind of, I would say, prevision, forecasting in terms of the productions and productivities with respect to the agriculture. For the disaster risk management or the natural disaster or even human disaster created by human being, I would say space can give an idea on the scope of the disaster. Space can give scenarios to allow to rescue people, etc., etc. The applications of space, in these areas are numerous. Now, are we concretely using that? Yes. For example, under GMS in Africa, you have an institution which is leading the consortia in Nigeria, which is tackling the flood monitoring issues. You also have ICPAC in Eastern Africa and RCMRD in Eastern Africa, both in Nairobi, leading consortia made up of institutions coming from different countries, tackling land degradation, tackling also the weather forecast for the agricultural provisions, etc. You also have in Central Africa, SECOS managing the navigability, fluvial navigability, using space data. These are the kind of applications I can quote. And before even that, there were some programs like MESA. Currently, we are talking about GMS in Africa, which is the latest of the programs. We had MESA, PUMA, MSD, which were using space data for all these examples: forest management, disaster risk reductions, agriculture, etc.
Which countries are showing promising progress over the past years?
I'm very, very well positioned to say that a lot of countries, several countries in Africa are making several progress on that. We can start with Ethiopia. Ethiopia, where we are right now. 5 to 10 years ago, we were not speaking about Ethiopia in the space arena in Africa. Today, Ethiopia is a key player. And this month, they will have the satellite launch also in collaboration with China. But before that, the Ethiopian engineers and scientists have been working on space matters. And you have Egypt, you have South Africa, you have Nigeria, you have Kenya, you have Ghana, and Gabon. They are coming on board now. And again, there are two things. Having a national institution tackling the space matters is one thing, but the existence of engineers, scientists in the space arena, that is another thing. And that one started way back ago. And we have several scientists, several engineers tackling the space matters. In general, Africa is on the good track. Countries are at the different levels, and there are three types of countries in Africa, I would say. Those who have been in the space arena for a while, those who are the newcomers in the new space arena, and those who are in need of space products and services, but they do not have the means or they didn't establish yet national institutions tackling the space matters.
Some people are saying Ethiopia's case is a kind of luxury. It's not a priority. What's your take on this?
What I will say, I'm respecting all the point of view, but what is important, Africa is the new El Dorado for the space business. And as I said at the beginning of my speech, space is in the middle of our life. I'll give you an example. We like changing channels and channels of the TVs. We want to be very well informed in timely manners. It is thanks to the satellite that information are broadcasted. Secondly, You have the mobile phone. Everywhere in Africa, in even the small villages, you have the mobile phone. It is thanks to the satellite that is happening. GPS integrated in cars, in everything. But are we asking ourselves the questions? Who is building these satellites? Who is offering that service now to Africa? We are paying for that. It costs. Having ourselves the capability to build these satellites, to be part of this business, it is the African citizens that will benefit from it. It would be better to start now and to build that capacity with time. It is not a luxury. Space can help, and it has been demonstrated, and it is being applied all over the world. India, China, these are the examples. America, Canada. They are using space products to develop their countries, to build scenarios. And it creates a lot of jobs. It creates a lot of jobs. We have to strengthen our young people, the students. We have to bring more women to build African capacity. Africa, it is about 1.3 billion inhabitants. 60% almost are young. It is an opportunity for us to train them, to educate them. In African context, the research and development should be very focused on African problems. This is why the Agenda 2063 considered the space as an outer space program, as a flagship program. The African Outer Space Program is a flagship program for the African Union. We want to allow all African countries to access and to benefit from the space knowledge, from the space product and the space services.
So you are just saying the launching of the satellites by Ethiopia is so important as other development agendas?
Absolutely. You see, first of all, I used to say that is a kind, Ethiopians have to be proud, to be proud of themselves. It is an achievement in terms of scientific knowledge, in terms of innovation. Secondly, that satellite has a purpose, and you'll see some changes with respect to that purpose. And again, the first beneficiaries are not the Ethiopians only. We see Africans taking advantage of that because we are pretty sure that Ethiopia would like to share their knowledge and experience with other countries. Secondly, the use of the satellite can be also useful for many other countries. This is the integration in Africa we are talking about.
Let's go to the challenges of African nations to apply the space science technology to boost up their development. What challenges or bottlenecks have so far been experienced?
From my point of view, the first challenge has been resolved, which was to have a kind of policy and strategy at the continental level. At national levels, we are encouraging national countries to develop and build their space policy and strategy in alignment with the continental one, to encourage the integration. The second challenge will be to develop a kind of regulatory framework. Because from a country to another country, we may be fast facing several policy rules, regulatory issues. We will have to develop an African space regulatory framework, because with respect to the space, there is an empty area in terms of space law, space policy, and there are several treaties. We know 4 treaties that have been signed. And Africa has to be able to align their activities, taking into account these treaties, even in the updating process of these treaties to contribute, because we were not there. Now we have to make sure African interest is part of that. All the discussions on the space debris, meaning when the satellite and these things have been built, and after their life, some of them are jeopardized, and some of them stay there, but we are not part of the discussion of the space on the space debris. And the biggest challenge, I think, will be the capacity building. The capacity building, starting by human capital. We have to train to empower, to strengthen our young people, and even our existing scientists and researchers, to provide them with opportunities to be worldwide, I would say, at the world level in terms of, competencies, skill set, etc. At the same time, we have to be able to provide African countries some infrastructures. That is very important. Infrastructures and equipment, in addition to the human capital, people very well trained, will make the difference tomorrow. And this is why I said it is an opportunity for Africans, of which 1,300,000,000 inhabitants. It is very interesting for us to take advantage of our youth and our women.
Can we say that Africa has got the right educated people that are trained with this sector?
I would say no. The question is no. But as I said, we have engineers and scientists. Do we have the critical mass in terms of people well trained to create that difference, to make that difference? I would say no. This is why it will be interesting to train a lot of students, a lot of young people to get that critical mass. Yes, we have teachers, we have researchers, we have scientists, we have engineers, but how many are they? They are less with respect vis-a-vis of the needs of Africa. Because as I said, we have 4 segments, and the 4 segments has to cover several areas, agriculture, forest, etc., etc. Then we need a lot of people. This is why sometimes on some fora I have the habit to say that the space is where you will have 20 to 30 years of capacity building to get at least to 15%. It will take time, but we have to start somewhere. And this is where we should be.
Well, in this regard, which countries are you just working with international agencies, for example, like NASA?
Currently, I would say the African Union Commission is working with several countries at different levels. With the European Commission, which includes several European countries, we have currently a project named Global Monitoring for Environment and Security, GMS in Africa. That program is a 30 million euro program funded by the European Commission over 3 years. It includes 122 African institutions coming from 45 countries. And we are tackling water and natural resources, marine and coastal areas in using the Copernicus data. We are also working with the Americans through the USAID, where they provide us with some financial support to do some kind of baseline studies and some kind of brainstorming sessions. We are also discussing with other countries like China, either bilaterally between countries like Ethiopia and China, like Egypt and China, South Africa and China, South Africa and India. There are these bilateral, but as African Union Commission, we are also discussing with them for, to look at some continental perspectives and even to develop some continental program. Because the African Union Commission is for all the continent, for the 55 countries. That is the reality we are facing.
Then finally, just your recommendation for countries to better benefit from the space science.
What I can just suggest as space expert, we have 2 big categories of Africans vis-a-vis of space. Those who can afford the space. We quoted these countries already. They have the financial capacity to get at least a space institution, space equipment, infrastructures, a bit of human capital. They have to pull other Africans, to lead other Africans, because whatever we do, we have to think about the integration. What they know, they have to share. Secondly, you have the second category of the Africans that do not have the means and the financial capacity to afford space. It doesn't mean that they do not have the needs. They are in need. All African countries are in need of using this space. Those who are in need, but they do not have the capacity to afford the equipment, the infrastructure, and even to train a critical mass, they should go to those who have that, and as a continent, a single continent, to work together. And the third opportunity will be from partners from abroad. The international cooperation in this arena is key and very important. We do not have to start from the scratch. We have to learn from others. Those who were there 50 to 80 years before us, they have a lot to share and we have a lot to learn from them. That should be done in the advantage for Africa, in the benefit of the Africans. But Africans, we have to use space for the integration, for the prosperity, and for the peace. This is the main goal of the Agenda 2063, the agenda of the African Union Commission.
Thank you for sharing your experience on space science, Dr. Tidiane.
It is a pleasure for me, and also I would say it is a pleasure for the African Union Commission to work with all African countries and international partners for the benefit of all Africans. Thank you very much for that opportunity. Well appreciated.
Dear viewers of Addis Dialogue, this is just the program on space science with Dr. Tidiane at African Union. Thank you for joining us again.